Hey guys, my name is Olga and welcome back to my channel. And today we are gonna talk about favorite eyeshadow palettes 2024. As a part of this video, we are gonna discuss drugstore makeup and more high-end makeup. And of course, we are gonna start from the eyeshadow palettes which are more on budget. Let's go! And today we are gonna start from Catrice and these two beautiful palettes. Our first palette is gonna be Safari Fever, and I think it is a great basic palette for some daily looks. We have beautiful matte eyeshadows here. It's easy to work with them, it's easy to blend them. They are not dusty, sorry. They are quite creamy and they are quite pigmented. This color story is not for everyone. It's a kind of a mix of something olive with something neutral and something warm. So if you have cool tone, this palette wouldn't work in your case. If you have more warm undertone, a light to medium skin tone, it should work nicely. And it wouldn't work in case of pale skin, of course. Talking about metallic eyeshadows, we have different formulas here, more like formula topper metallic, and some basic metallics. They're great, you can easily apply them with brushes, so not need to use your fingers. The only thing and the only issue related to this particular shade, it's far better to apply it with your fingers. Talking about wearing point of view, they are kind of great. These metallics don't really crease and they don't fall off while wearing. But of course, depending on your specific anatomy, some metallics may crease a little bit. Easy to work, and I think that this palette is great and basic. The next palette is gonna be a limited edition Joker, and I have it in shade 20. So actually, if I'm not mistaken, two palettes were available, and I took this beautiful green palette, and I wanted to show you this palette because of this particular shade. And time to time, this formula might be released as a part of some limited editions, and this formula is just simply insane for a drugstore. Can you imagine? Can you believe? It looks more like a product from Natasha Denona. And this particular shade shifts a little bit from green to blue and golden. It's just gorgeous. And I'm so impressed by this formula. And it's not new. It was released probably 2 years ago or something, and if you see this formula in a particular palette from Catrice, just simply grab it, because this formula is more high-end. Yeah, there are some shades from this palette that are not that nice. Some metallics are quite dry and it's not that easy to apply them. Matte eyeshadows are great, but I'm not a big fan of these two shades because they can stack a little bit and it's not that easy to blend them, but they are quite pigmented. I do like as well these two beautiful shades. They're a little bit dry, but still, take a look. They're so lovely and they are so bright. Of course, these two formulas, these two shades, may emphasize skin texture a little bit, so be careful, take it into account. I don't really like which one? This one and this one. This one is okay, but these two, they're way too dry in my personal opinion, but others are okay. This palette is definitely not for some daily looks, but I still think that it's great and it's just worth buying simply because of this shade. And I do want to have a palette with these metallics. I know that it would definitely cost a lot if it's released, but I mean, this palette, this formula is great. And yeah, this palette is quite lovely as well, especially if you like green story. And by the way, we have one more beautiful shade here. This one, it's a kind of a duochrome. It shifts a little bit from light green to white. So quite lovely. Next two palettes are gonna be from Poland, and we are gonna start from this small cool tone palette from Han. It's easy to work with this palette. Matte eyeshadows are pigmented, easy to blend all of them, and this palette is definitely cool tone. But yeah, we have one shade which is a little bit warm. Talking about metallic, it's quite creamy. It might be applied with a brush, looks lovely on eyelid, doesn't emphasize skin texture. But this palette has at least one drawback. Matte eyeshadows are dusty. They are creamy, they're soft, but they are so dusty. So be careful while working with this palette and don't forget to tap off extra. Otherwise, these matte eyeshadows may fall off a little bit while being applied. But it's easy to work with it and it costs around €3, maybe a little bit less. Eveline. And I do want to show you this beautiful palette. Actually, 4 or 5 palettes are available in this line and they are great. But this formula and this particular palette is kind of new from the formula point of view, especially if we talk about metallics. Metallics here are quite bright, creamy, soft, and they look lovely on eyelid. Matte eyeshadows are quite pigmented, easy to work, easy to blend. There is only one problem with this particular shade. It's a little bit dry and it's a little bit patchy. So just be careful with this shade. This palette costs around €8 or €9, and for this money, it's great. I'm not a big fan of this packaging. It looks horrible. And yeah, it's so easy to break it. But the product inside is great, and these palettes, for some daily looks, they are great, and knowing that it's easy to work with them, it's perfect. Matte eyeshadows are not dusty at all. And at the same time, they are creamy and quite pigmented. Like metallics as well, but be careful with metallics because they can emphasize skin texture a little bit, especially if you apply a lot. And if you have never tried any palettes from Eveline, you should definitely try at least some, because they are great. Genderix Beauty Daydream palette. I was surprised when I saw this palette and when I touched it, because the quality is amazing. Matte eyeshadows are super soft, creamy, and pigmented. Easy to blend them, they are not really dusty. There are some shades that are kind of a little bit dusty, but it's okay, it's not that bad. Color story is quite lovely, especially if we talk about some daily looks. We have cool tone story here and neutral warm story here, and you can easily do different looks. Metallics are quite wonderful as well. They're quite creamy, but I would say that these 3 shades are more sparkles, more toppers. They don't really have visible base, so it's far better to apply them over something. We have 3 highlighters here, but you can use them as eyeshadows. Actually, lovely eyeshadows. They look bright on skin and they don't really emphasize skin texture because they don't have visible base. So kind of extra glitters. This palette is definitely great, and I know that a new palette was released. And actually, I saw it at DM, and from the quality point of view, it's also quite great. And it's more about metallic story. I'm gonna find a picture and gonna show it somewhere here. This brand is a German brand, and I think I don't know whether it's available in some other countries or no. But this palette is definitely great, and I was surprised. I mean, it's so great from the quality point of view. Moving to England, UK. And our first product is going to be from MUA Makeup Academy, Neutral Wanderlust. This palette is wonderful for some daily looks. It's written here that it's neutral, but it's not neutral. It's neutral warm, and if you have cold undertone, pale skin, this color store wouldn't work in your case, and these shades would look, especially this one, would appear a little bit orange in your case. If you have neutral warm undertone, should be fine. If you have light medium skin tone, should be great as well. I do like this palette, not only because of the color story and because it's kind of a basic palette for some daily looks, but for the quality as well. I'm not a big... Okay, it has a drawback. Matte eyeshadows are dusty, just dusty, extremely dusty, but they're soft, creamy, pigmented, and they're blendable. And you can layer them, and they look gorgeous on eyelid. They don't emphasize anything, so they are quite creamy. Metallics are moment. Should I say something? I mean, should I say something? Really? It's great. They are so creamy. They look so wonderful on eyelid, and I'm so impressed by the quality. Of course, they may crease a little bit because they are way too creamy. And if you have deep eyes, as I do, you should use a primer before applying them, or you should use some liquid eyeshadows before applying them. But they're so great, they're so creamy, and they might be applied with a brush. I'm so impressed, and I think that this palette is gorgeous for some daily looks. Beauty Bay. No words. No words. It's limited edition. We have only toppers here, shimmers, and this palette is just gorgeous for 12 €. 9 beautiful, slightly duochrome. Yeah, some shades are duochrome, some are a little bit basic. For 12 €. It's just lovely. It's great. Yes, the packaging is not the best one. I agree. It's made of paper. It's of carton, actually. But still, this product, I mean, these eyeshadows, they are great. They are soft, they are creamy, they don't emphasize skin texture, they look lovely. I'm a big fan of these 5 shades. These 4 have visible base, and be careful with this shade because it stains. So don't apply it directly on eyelid because otherwise you won't be able to remove it easily. And these 5 toppers, just simply toppers without visible base, and they look great. These 2 shifts a little bit from golden to pink, more pink here, more golden here. Basic white pink shade looks super good on eyelid. Basic kind of cool tone pink, great, lovely. I filmed a dedicated review with 4 looks, if I'm not mistaken. These shimmers are just great. This palette is perfect, and Beauty Bay is awesome. Just simply awesome. I think that this palette is just worth buying. I know that they had a restock, but I don't know whether this palette is available or no. Revolution, guys. Revolution. 4 palettes. And I think that the best are these 2, of course, but we're gonna start from this one. It's a basic eyeshadow palette with some toppers. If you wanna try just simply toppers, why not? I think it's still available in some places. You can take it online. Of course, it's not that, I mean, shimmers are not that bright, but they are great for some daily looks. For makeup without makeup day, you can use them as highlighters. Actually, they don't have visible base. They look great. They don't fall off while wearing. The only thing that they are way too creamy, and it's far better to apply these toppers with fingers. It's possible to apply with a brush, but not that easy actually. So just bear in mind, and I think that this palette is quite lovely for this money. And if you buy it on sales, it's going to be around 3 or 4 euro or something. The next palette is going to be this one. We have tried all 3 palettes, but I think that from the quality point of view, this palette is the best one. And if we compare this line to this line, choose this one, because quality is stable here. Quality is not that stable if we talk about this line. I think that this palette is better because we have different formulas here, different finishes. Matte eyeshadows are quite great, quite stable in this palette. Easy to work with them. They are not dusty. I can't really say that they are super creamy. They are not that creamy as here, but it's quite easy to work with them. They are blendable, and they might be layered. And we have beautiful shimmers here. I'm not a big fan of this formula. I think it's a little bit useless. It's way too dry. But if we talk about green palette from this line, this formula is a little bit better there and a little bit more creamy. In this palette, this formula is dry and you can't really apply it with a brush, and it doesn't look that nice. It just basic, super basic, not pigmented at all, so I don't really like it, and it can easily emphasize skin texture. But I do like basic metallics here. They are soft, they are quite creamy, they might be applied with a brush, and they're okay. They're just simply okay. The best formula is this one, and this product reminds me Space Cowboy from Urban Decay. And actually, while I was filming a review, and we discussed, and I saw you swatches side by side, so I still think that this one, these guys, is a kind of a dupe to Urban Decay. Of course, it's not that bright as Urban Decay, but it might be layered and it looks lovely. This formula is kind of shimmery, kind of a topper. It doesn't have really visible base. Looks super great on eyelid, doesn't emphasize anything. Wonderful. These two are quite similar to this one, but this shade has visible base. This shade is a kind of a mix of these two guys. So this palette is okay, but it wouldn't work in case of cold undertone, pale skin, because these shades are warm. This one is definitely warm, just simply orange. These two are kind of warm. If you have warm undertone or neutral undertone, this palette may work in your case. Icon lines, and they are great. And they are stable from the quality point of view. So I have two palettes, and they are just great. Don't have any questions. We have, I have, first of all, the Muse Icon palette and the True Icon palette. The True Icon palette is warm, and if you have warm undertone, it would work in your case. If you have cold undertone or pale skin, this palette would appear way too orange in your case. We don't have any neutral shades here. Well, probably this shade is more or less neutral, and that's it. That's it. We have two cream eyeshadows here, and you can use them as a base for your eyeshadow look. But your look wouldn't be long-lasting, actually. And this formula doesn't dry down, so bear in mind, and don't forget to set it with a powder, at least a little bit. Otherwise, your makeup can easily crease, so be careful. But these cream eyeshadows are pigmented, easy to blend them, and they might be layered. They look great. Matte eyeshadows, great. They are a little bit dusty, but they are super creamy, they are super pigmented, easy to work, easy to blend. They might be layered if needed, and they work nicely with each other. They are not patchy at all. All shades are great. Metallics are just simply great because they are creamy, they are bright, and they are gorgeous. We actually have two formulas here, more basic metallic and more like toppers. And by the way, same here, we have exactly the same formulas and this exactly the same texture. So these basic metallics are okay, might be applied with a brush, no worries. Toppers, I suggest applying with fingers because they're way too creamy. It's possible to find a brush using which you can apply these toppers, but it's not that easy. This palette is more cool tone, I would say neutral cool tone. So if you have pale skin, cold undertone, it would work far better in your case. Metallics are exactly the same. Basic metallic, basic metallic, basic metallic, toppers, cream eyeshadows, same formula, no difference. Matte eyeshadows are creamy, soft. The only thing that here we have two shimmery matte eyeshadows, but they are not that bad. They're not that dusty. They are a little bit more dusty than these three, but still they are kind of great and they are quite pigmented, and especially this dark black shade is really dark black and it looks lovely. These palettes are great, just simply great. You definitely should try them. Korean makeup, and I have one palette to show from Lily Barrett, and Korean makeup palettes are not super pigmented. And if we talk about metallics, they are not that bright as we are used to. But I want to show you this palette because of matte eyeshadows, because they are super creamy, they are soft, they are blendable, and they are not dusty. And if you want to layer, you can layer. And for some daily looks, this palette is great. And if you have cold undertone, it's perfect because this palette is cool tone. It's a kind of a mix of pink with a bit of beige, brown, and purple. Looks great. Metallics are not the best, but I'm so impressed by matte eyeshadows. So if you want to try Korean eyeshadow palettes, why not? And this product is quite nice, but I suggest buying it on sales. Kiko Milano, and I have only 2 palettes to show. We're gonna start from this beautiful small palette, Days in Bloom collection in shade 1, and I was shocked. I was completely shocked that here we have only 4 grams, and this palette, I paid for it 24 euro. I think for Kika, it's a lot. It's definitely a lot. But I'm so impressed by the quality. Matte eyeshadows are great, creamy, they are not dusty, easy to blend them, pigmentation is between average and high, might be layered, they are super creamy, especially this dark shade is great. It's super, super creamy. Metallics are great. They are creamy, they are soft, they don't emphasize skin texture, and we have a kind of a beautiful topper here. By the way, this shade shifts from pink to yellow to golden, to light golden, and this shade is a beautiful topper. And this formula reminds me more high-end products. The only thing that, in my personal opinion, it's a little bit dusty, and for this money, I expected something different. But still, I think it's a beautiful palette for some daily looks, and it looks lovely, but of course it's better to buy it on sales. And one more palette from Kiko Milano, Holiday Wonderlights, and I'm so impressed. This palette is neutral warm, so if you are extremely pale, probably no, then yes, because this palette would appear a little bit orange in your case. This palette is just simply something. We have different formulas here. We have a beautiful, creamy, bright topper here. And it looks even wet on eyelid. It doesn't really have visible base, but it's possible to apply a lot. And in this case, you're gonna see. If we talk about this metallic shade, it reminds me more high-end products, and actually it reminds me a little bit Tom Ford. It looks lovely, but it's a little bit way too metallic, so due to this, it can emphasize skin texture a little bit. And this shade is a kind of a mix of these two, and it's a beautiful metallic shade, looks lovely. It's not easy to apply these eyeshadows with a brush, but it's doable, it's possible. They are so creamy, and they definitely reminds me Natasha Denona, especially if we talk about these 2 shades. This palette is gorgeous. It's available in 2 shades, and the second one is more cool tone. So I have shade 1, I think. Yes, I have shade 1, so shade 2 is more cool tone. Moving to more high-end products, and we are gonna start from Anastasia Beverly Hills Spice and Sugar palette. They are not the best from the quality point of view, they have some drawbacks, but I do like the color story. And actually, let's start from Sugar palette. Basic palette for some daily looks if you have warm undertone. If you think that this shade is cool tone, you're wrong. When you start blending it, it appears more warm on the eyelid, and it won't work in case of pale skin, would appear orange. Be careful. We have 3 shades which are a mix of shimmers and matte. Hate this formula. Hate this formula because it's dusty, and the shimmers fall off while blending, so I'm not a big fan of them. But matte eyeshadows are great from the quality point of view, easy to blend them, they work nicely, they're a little bit dusty, but they are pigmented and they might be layered. All shades work perfectly and looks great. Matte, oh sorry, not matte. These 3 are toppers, and they are great. They are great. They don't fall off while wearing. Looks lovely on eyelid. Doesn't emphasize anything. Great. This shade is a kind of a basic metallic shade. Doesn't emphasize anything. It's quite creamy. It's quite soft, and at the same time pigmented. Sugar palette is more interesting from the color story point of view, but from the quality point of view, it's a little bit worse. Actually, we have 2 actually these two shades, and they're so dry. They're extremely dry, so you have to be careful while blending them, and they may stuck a little bit. And as well, we have metallic shimmery matte shades here. So yeah, they're dusty. Matte, these two, they are great from the quality point of view, easy to blend, they are pigmented, might be layered, they work nicely with other shades, and this palette is more cool tone. So if you have warm undertone for some daily looks, this one is better. If you have cold undertone, pale skin, this palette is going to be better in your case. Again, we have three beautiful toppers here. This shade is gorgeous. It shifts from light blue to purple, and it's visible on eyelid. It does not really have visible glaze. It has a little bit, but if you apply it over something, it would be far better. These two are quite great as well. They don't fall off while wearing, but be careful while applying because some shimmers may fall off a little bit. Basic metallic, and it's fine. It's fine. Actually, you can use this metallic as a base for these two shades, and it would look lovely. So yeah, like the color story, but I wish that some shades were better from the quality point of view. But still, I think that these palettes are great for some daily looks and not only daily looks. The next palette is going to be from Nars. Orgasm. It's basic, but it's lovely. We have one matte shade here. Matte eyeshadows from Nars. They're great. They're soft, creamy. They're not dusty. They're blendable. You can layer them. And they're just simply great. I like them. And here we have quite basic formula, metallic formula. Slightly, I would say even satin metallic formula. Looks so lovely on eyelid. All of these shades, they look lovely on eyelid. They don't emphasize anything. These two are more satin. This shade is kind of a mix of metallic with toppers. So it has some extra glitters. These glitters are not that visible, but still it has something like this. So for some daily basic looks, it's great. But of course, it's warm. And if you have cold undertone, pale skin, not your palette at all, because this shade would appear orange a little bit in your case. In case of neutral, would appear more peach. In case of warm, peach pink shade. I like this palette, and it's fresh. It looks fresh on eyelids. So like it, love it. And I like eyeshadows from Nars. Maybe they are not that popular, I know, but from the quality point of view, yes, and by the way, they are kind of basic. But from the quality point of view, they are great. The next palette is going to be from Charlotte Tilbury, limited edition 2023. And I like this palette. And I know that it wasn't that popular, I would say, and not that many people like it, but I'm so impressed by this formula. It's so soft and creamy, and it's more cream, kind of cream to powder formula. The texture is super thin and silky. And if you have mature skin or super dry skin in the under eye area or on your eyelid, this formula is just simply great, and it's gorgeous. This formula is a little bit different. It's not that creamy as this one. It's easy to work with this formula. Of course, it's not that pigmented as here, Makeup by Mara, but different textures. Here we have more powdery formula. Here we have more creamy formula, and that's the main reason why. And actually, this formula as well reminds me slightly this palette from Huda Beauty. I know that quite many people hate this palette, but I like it. I will explain you why I like it. So great. And despite the fact that it's kind of creamy, it stays in place. Unless, of course, you have oily prone skin. In your case, may not really work, especially if you apply it as it is. So, and actually it's going to be expected. Talking about shimmers, yes, I think that they are not for everyone because they're kind of bright. And we have kind of some glittery shades here. And for Charlotte, I think that some shades are a little bit dry. But it's possible to do some nice looks, and these shimmers, these toppers, they don't emphasize skin texture. and they look lovely on eyelid. I ordered, and actually I received a new palette from Charlotte today. And I don't know, maybe I will film a dedicated video. And again, I know that the color story is not the best one, but I took it on sales and I paid for it 45 euro or something. For 60 euro, I think the color story is not the best one. Like this formula, especially these matte eyeshadows. They are lovely. They are great. Of course, Makeup by Mario. Ethereal Eyes. Of course, I'm a big fan of this palette. It's a beautiful working palette. We have everything here. It's more like neutral warm. We don't really have, well, probably this shade is a little bit cool tone, and that's it. And it's great. It's great. Matte eyeshadows, they're just wonderful. Yeah, they're a little bit powdery. They're not that creamy as this formula I've already shown you from Charlotte, but they're so pigmented, so easy to work with these eyeshadows. They're kind of creamy, and they work nicely together. I'm impressed. I'm in love. By the way, be careful that this shade is a little bit drier in my personal opinion if I would compare it to others. Metallics are great. We have three beautiful toppers here. You can use them as it is. You can apply them over matte eyeshadows, or you can apply them over some metallics. This shade is kind of a mix of metallic and topper, basic metallic shade, and it's a beautiful working palette, and it's a beautiful palette for some daily looks and event looks. Yes, color story is basic, but I like basic palettes because everyone needs a beautiful basic palette. And if you have neutral warm undertone, this palette is just simply gorgeous. I took the cool tone one as well on sale, and I received it today. Moving on, Huda Beauty, guys. Huda Beauty, guys. I know that quite many people hate this formula from Huda, hate this palette, but I like it. And let me explain why I like it. It's a base for a makeup artist. We have creamy shades here. Cream basic shades here. We can use all these shades as a base, and we can apply powder based eyeshadows over, and a makeup look is going to be super long lasting. It's easy to blend these shades, but of course I know that some people had an issue with applying these cream eyeshadows. You should take something kind of flat and not super fluffy like this, because otherwise you won't be able to take this product on brush, or you have to spend time. But from the wearing point of view, from the blending point of view, this palette is kind of nice. Shimmers are gorgeous, especially this shade is great. And if you're a makeup artist, it's a beautiful base cream palette. But for some daily looks, if you have oily prone skin, it's definitely no. In your case, this product is not going to be long lasting. By the way, dark shades stain, so that's why in some cases this palette would be quite long lasting, even if you apply it as it is. I can wear it as it is, despite the fact that I have deep eyes, and in my case, nothing actually creases. So I know that it's not for everyone. I know it. But for me, it's more yes than no, because I know how to work with this palette. I know that it wouldn't work with all brushes, and I know which brushes I should use for applying it and for working with this palette. And for me, this palette is okay, and I like it. And of course, the star of 2024 from Huda Beauty, Icy Nude Palette. Of course, I had a dedicated review. You can find it on this channel. And yeah, this palette is great. It's cool tone. It's a neutral cool tone palette. We have several slightly warm shades here, but main color story is cool tone. Matte eyeshadows are great. They are pigmented. It's easy to work with these matte eyeshadows. They are blendable. They are great. They are not dusty. Metallics are great as well, but be careful with these two shades because they are a little bit flaky. and you have to be careful while applying them, because some pieces may fall off and you won't be able to remove it. It's not that easy to remove them. So just simply be careful. Beautiful duochrome shade, but I found an exact dupe. Beautiful topper again, but I found an exact dupe. You can easily check ColourPop. You can check Sephora. Basic metallics, they are great. They're soft, creamy. Looks lovely, looks great. This palette is perfect. It's just simply perfect. And if you have cold undertone, it's your choice. If you have pale skin, it's your choice. And it's your basic palette. Here we have a beautiful, I would say, gray pink shade. And it's kind of, it's not really unique, but it's not that easy to find this particular shade. And as well, we have a beautiful shade that might be used as a crease shade in case of cold undertone. So yes, I can definitely suggest buying this palette. It's just simply great, and it has some drawbacks. So you just simply have to be careful with toppers, with metallics, and that's it. And I'm so disappointed. I'm so... it's so sad. It's so sad that it's the last big palette from Huda Beauty, because I think that her big palettes are way better from the quality point of view. I don't really like her 9 shades palettes, because in most of the cases quality is worse, and it's expected because these 9 pans palette are made in China and these big palettes are made in Italy. And it's crucial. It's crucial. And I hope that it won't be. That in reality, it's not the last palette from Huda Beauty, because we need more, and we need more palettes like this. Great. Now let's discuss Yves Saint Laurent and Guerlain. And we are gonna finish today with Natasha Denona. I have 6 palettes from Natasha, so that's why we are gonna finish with Natasha Denona. Yves Saint Laurent. Well, actually, this palette is quite lovely. I have shade 400, and I'm impressed by matte eyeshadows. They are kind of, again, cream to powder. I like creamy textures. I like creamy matte eyeshadows because they look so perfectly in case of dry brown skin. And it's quite crucial in case of mature skin, dry brown skin, to apply something not that dry. It's not that pigmented if we compare it to Maria, for instance, but it looks kind of softer on eyelid. Easy to work with it, easy to blend it, looks great. I hate one shade from this palette, this one, because it is a mix of matte and shimmers again. So that's why this particular shade is a little bit dusty, and these shimmers may fall off while wearing, actually, and especially while blending. I like these beautiful toppers, but actually, they're a little bit, in my personal opinion, dusty, but they look so great on eyelid and so lovely. And if you want to try these palettes from YSL, I think why not? They are kind of great. But of course, depending on a specific palette, you may have different formulas. I do like as well basic beige brown story, and probably on sales I will buy it, or I won't. We'll see how it goes. But actually I like it. I think it looks lovely. Guerlain, and I'm impressed by this palette and by formulas. We have satin shades here, 3 satin shades here, and they look so yummy. Texture is super thin, super silky, looks great, and this satin shade might be used as matte eyeshadows, actually. And if you have mature skin, they should look lovely. They are not that pigmented, again, of course, and they are satin, so that's why it's expected. But it's easy to work with these satin shades, and they are great. Texture is super, super thin, super silky. And this formula doesn't emphasize anything. And here we have a beautiful, beautiful topper, and it's not that dusty as a topper from this palette. And if I have to choose, I would probably choose this product from Guerlain, because formulas are a little bit more interesting and unique, I would say. And I like this topper. It's just so lovely. It's thin, quite silky, and if you have mature skin, it should look lovely. Because if we compare these two textures, Yves Saint Laurent is a little bit more powdery and a bit more thicker, I would say. So in case of mature skin, try this one. And if you have dry brown skin, and these satin shades, they are delicious and great. Natasha Denona. Of course, Natasha Denona, and we are gonna start from small palettes. And yeah, let's go, let's go. And our first palette for today is gonna be Biba, Baby Biba palette. It's a basic palette for some daily looks. We have two beautiful matte shades here and a basic metallic shade. Formulas are great. Basic metallic matte formula from Natasha Denona. Of course, this palette is far better, would work far better in case of warm undertone or neutral undertone, because this shade, transition shade, is warm actually, and it looks lovely. Metallic is basic, creamy, soft, and doesn't emphasize skin texture. These two beautiful palettes. Let's start from my mini dream palette. If you think that it's cool tone, you're wrong. It's not cool tone. This shade is a little bit, this one is a little bit warm, and in case of cold undertone, pale skin would appear way too warm. This one looks more neutral, but it has a little bit of something peachy. This shade is fully neutral, it looks great. And we have two basic metallics here. This palette is lovely, and again, it is a beautiful palette for some daily basic looks. But if you have cold undertone, you probably wouldn't like it, and most likely you wouldn't use this particular shade. This one might be used, and by the way, it's kind of a mix of beige with a bit of pink, and it's great. It's a beautiful transition shade. So yes, I do like this palette. The second one, actually the third one, Mini Starlight palette. And again, if you think that it's a cool tone palette, you're wrong, because these two shades are warm in real life. And especially I would say this one, because it's more peachy on skin. And if you have cold undertone, in your case, it might be a little bit orange. This shade is more cool tone, and it looks kind of lovely, and it contains a bit of purple. This shade appears more neutral, but it's not that neutral. It's a little bit warm as well. And this palette is quite lovely, but this shade is not new. It was a part of, if I'm not mistaken, Mini Retro. So this shade is not new, and this shade is warm as well. This one is crystal formula, so it's a kind of a topper. This one is a basic metallic shade, and from the quality point of view, this palette is lovely and great, and this one as well. So yeah, if you want to try these small palettes, I think that they are great, and you can easily do some basic looks for some daily looks, I would say. Golden palette. The packaging looks lovely, but fingerprints are everywhere. Same thing here. Roxa palette. The same, more or less the same packaging, just we simply have different shades. So, beautiful color story if you have warm undertone, if you have pale skin, and if you have light skin, cold undertone, and even neutral undertone. In case of neutral may work, in case of cold wouldn't work at all, because in your case this palette would appear simply orange and no other options. We almost don't have any neutral shades here. This palette is quite nice from the quality point of view. We have two different matte formulas here. More creamy formula and kind of basic matte formula from Natasha. Easy to work, easy to apply. Be careful with this creamy formula from Natasha because it's not that pigmented as this one, but at the same time, it's creamy. It's creamy. Metallics are great, but there is one shade that I don't really like. I don't really like this formula from Natasha because sometimes if you use it daily, it's sooner or later you can't really apply it with a brush. It just kind of, your brush simply glides over and you can't see any product on the brush. but this shade looks kind of lovely. It's a mix of white with golden. Basic metallic shades from Natasha, great, creamy, soft, they don't emphasize skin texture. Beautiful topper from Natasha. This formula was released as a part of I Need a Nude palette, and I like this formula. I think that it's great and it's stylish. These three are simply great. Basic metallics, beautiful creamy metallics from Natasha, and a kind of mix. It's a kind of a mix. Oh, it's called crystal. Yeah, dot. Crystal formula, great. By the way, this formula, this particular shade is a kind of a mix of crystal with this topper. So this shade looks gorgeous on eyelid. But this palette is not for everyone because it's way too warm. And if we compare this one to this one from Natasha Denona, I Need a Warm palette. They're not the same. Of course, they're not the same. And I would say that this one is a little bit darker, and there are some shades that contain a bit of olive, if you know what I mean. This one is more warm, neutral warm palette, and actually it's lovely for some daily looks. This one is quite lovely as well. And I like this palette, and I think that it's great from the quality point of view, and all shades are great from the quality point of view. We have basic matte formula from Natasha here, and one cream formula, one shade in cream formula, and this one is great. And by the way, this shade is not, this formula is not exactly the same as here. I think that currently, as a part of this palette, it's better, and this shade reminds me Charlotte Tilbury, this formula. More or less the same thing. It's lovely, it's easy to apply it, it's easy to blend it, and it's quite pigmented. And it's not dusty, because sometimes if we talk about some palettes from Natasha that contain this creamy formula, they might be kind of not really dusty. Sometimes it's not easy to apply them with a brush. Metallics. Great, we have a beautiful duochrome here, and it's really a duochrome. It shifts from pink to golden green. It looks lovely. We have basic metallics here, crystal formula. All shades might be applied with a brush. But again, if you have pale skin, if you have light skin and cold undertone, this palette is not yours, because all shades are warm, especially these shades. This one is more neutral, this one is more neutral, and these two are kind of neutral. But these two are super warm, and this one is even a little bit orange. Lovely, great, like it. From the quality point of view, I like it. So for instance, if you're a makeup artist, you can take I Need a Nude palette, Glam palette, and I Need a Warm palette, and you are done. But, well, actually you need one more olive palette. Or you can buy a single eyeshadow, olive single eyeshadow, and you can mix everything. And you're gonna be done with eyeshadows. So these palettes are great. And finally, our last palette for today, Roxa palette. And if you wanna try, and if you need a purple palette, it's a good choice, I think. We have beautiful purple shades from this side and slightly red shades on this side. Metallics are quite great, but I'm not a big fan of this particular shade. The shade itself is beautiful. It's a kind of a mix of light pink with light blue, but sooner or later you won't be able to apply it with a brush, because as soon as you start to apply it with a brush, your brush glides like an ice. So yeah, be careful. And yeah, we have some basic metallic shades here. This one, and actually this one is kind of basic as well, but it has some extra glitters. And we have a beautiful topper, new formula from Natasha, great, lovely. And this beautiful shade shifts a little bit from pink to yellow, and I'm impressed. And my beloved shade is this one, if we talk about matte eyeshadows, because it's quite unique. It's a mix of purple and gray. Not that easy to find this shade, and not that easy to see the shade correctly on eyelid. And if we talk about purple, it's also quite lovely. Purple shades are quite complicated it's not that easy to produce them, and it's quite costly to produce them correctly. So if we talk about affordable makeup brands, finding a lovely and a correct purple shade is almost impossible because it's pricey. It's really pricey. So yes, I do like this palette, but I definitely understand that as a normal person and as the person who does only some basic daily looks, brownie daily looks, you don't really need this palette. In your case, you're gonna use only these beautiful toppers, and that's it. Because other shades are, or probably you will use some dark shades for drawing some wings, and that's it. So think about it. If you need purple, it's a beautiful palette. But if you don't need purple shades, you don't need this palette. It doesn't make sense to buy it just for simply for several shades. 72, 73 euro just for 2 shades. I think it's a little bit too much, and you can easily find some single eyeshadows if you need only toppers. And it was our last product for today. So let me know down below your favorite eyeshadow palettes 2024. And if you don't know what to write, just simply leave several emojis and it would help the channel to grow. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if yes, don't forget to put a thumbs up and consider subscribing. I wish you a pleasant day, and I hope to see you soon in the next video. Ciao, ciao!